accused of jeopardising the Big Daddy, the net zero 2050 target, has he? And if so, do you care? And parliamentarians, they have been busy writing letters to companies, putting pressure on them to stop Russell Brand earning money. I remind you, at this stage, we have allegations only, no charges, and certainly no proven guilt. What do you make to this? Is it Parliament overreach? I think so. Am I wrong? And in new Fossage case, Starmer has admitted that he does not want us to diverge from the EU. What do you make to that? And from attitudes to gay sex and single parenting to views on abortion and the role of women in the home, Britain is now more liberal than ever. Yes, that is good news. But is it always a good thing? Is society better? You tell me. We'll have it all to come and more. But before we get into it, let's grab tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thank you. Good evening. Well, as you've been hearing, the Bank of England has left its interest rate unchanged at 5.25%. Our economics and business editor Liam Halligan has more.
We're a couple of hours on now, but at 12 noon today, the Bank of England behind me, their Monetary Policy Committee did make the really important decision to hold interest rates at 5.25%. Finally, after 14 successive rate rises from 0.1% at the end of 2001 all the way up to 5.25%, the Bank of England has finally decided enough is enough. And inflation is now coming down, and there's no need, for now at least, to raise rates anymore. This will be a huge relief to young families with variable rate mortgages. It will be a huge relief to companies with variable rate loans. It will be a huge relief to many consumers across the country who have been grappling with high energy bills.
Liam Halligan outside the Bank of England earlier on today. Well, the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says, despite the bank's decision, Britain's been left worse off under the Tories.
I think there will be a sense of relief, particularly for those who are coming up to the end of their mortgage deals. But let's look at where we are in the bigger picture, because somebody coming up to remortgage their house today is looking at paying £220 more a month than they would have done if they had have remortgaged a year ago. So this is still a very challenging time for families and businesses with the cost of living crisis, which continues to bite.
Well, home buyers and borrowers may start to feel the benefits of the Bank of England's announcement today, shortly after it was made. Nationwide said it'll be cutting the majority of its fixed-rate mortgages. The country's biggest building society will now offer 5- and 10-year fixed-rate mortgages of below 5% for first-time buyers and home movers. Away from the economy, the Prime Minister says hard-pressed families shouldn't have to pay an unaffordable price for the UK to reach net zero. But Shadow Minister for Industry and Decarbonisation Sarah Jones says the government's plan to roll back on some climate policies is the wrong decision. Rishi Sunak, though, insists he won't proceed with plans that could punish motorists and working families.
We've been through the numbers and we're absolutely confident that we are on track to hit all our international and domestic targets, which, by the way, are world leading. And the reason I have confidence in that is because we've over-delivered on all of our carbon budgets to date. Despite everyone saying, oh, you might not hit them, we've over-delivered on them. Plus, we can see that the costs of some of these new technologies are falling far faster than people have predicted. Offshore wind is a great example of that. Cost today 70% less than we predicted in 2016.
The media mogul Rupert Murdoch is stepping down from his role as chairman of Fox and News Corporation. In a note to staff, the 92-year-old said that he and his companies are in robust health and that the battle for freedom of speech has never been more intense. He'll take on the role of chairman emeritus, while his son Lachlan becomes the sole chairman of both companies. The former soldier Daniel Khalif has pleaded not guilty to escaping from Wandsworth Prison in London. He's accused of strapping himself to the underside of a food delivery vehicle on September the 6th, sparking a 4-day manhunt. The 21-year-old appeared in court via video link from HMP Belmarsh. More actions needed to crack down on shoplifters, according to the Co-op Group. It reported the highest ever levels of shop crime and says its food business lost £33 million this year because of theft and security. The retail chain says looting and organised crime are part of the problem. The vast majority of offenders are going unpunished, it says. And lastly, His Majesty the King has been paying tribute to what he calls the indispensable relationship between the United Kingdom and France on the second day of his state visit to France. His Majesty and the Queen spent the afternoon visiting a flower market before heading off to Notre Dame Cathedral. Earlier, he became the only British monarch ever to speak from the Senate chamber in Paris. Speaking in English and in French, he celebrated the friendship and warm familiarity between the two nations, as well as unity on issues like climate change.
Our two governments are working in partnership to address so many global challenges, and yet, as ever, it is our people who are the true driving force of our relationship. Our friendship and warm familiarity are fortified by each new connection between us. It is renewed by each newfound joy in the culture of the other, and each reminder of how much we share.
His Majesty the King. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on your digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
7 o'clock tonight, alongside me, the co-founder of the campaign group Together, Alan Miller, and journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. Good evening to both of you. Just during the headlines there, Michael was saying to me, why are we not talking about Rupert Murdoch? You're saying that's a big story. Tell me why you're so bothered about Rupert Murdoch saying farewell.
Well, Rupert Murdoch, in his, 65 years he's been owning newspapers and so on, he's transformed the media around the globe, not least in this country. The Sun newspaper, he took over, it was an ailing paper, very little circulation, transformed it into the best-selling paper. He founded Sky Television. Some people will argue that he reduced the media to the gutter, and of course you remember he had to close down News of the World. On the other hand, I think the Times newspaper is the best newspaper there is around right now, and he saved that probably from closure.
Well, the reason I chose not to talk about it today is because I thought, actually, quite frankly, there's more than enough going on in the world. Are you bothered about Rupert Murdoch?
He's had a big contribution, but I think, you know, sometimes you can turn someone into being bigger than they actually are, if that's possible, because some of the conversations about it always assume that the public are a bit stupid. That's often been the backdrop, and I think he actually rated the public, so some of his critics missed that point.
I think he was brilliant at understanding public opinion in a way that very few other people on the planet do. Tony Blair is another who does, but they're rare creatures.
Well, you tell me. Any interest in the Rupert Murdoch situation? At 92, that's how old he has worked until. Would you work until your 90s? But I guess, you know what, if you love what you do, I suspect that old saying that if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. Is that true? You get in touch. Give me all your thoughts, but I've got a bumper show coming up for you tonight. I want to talk to you about what on earth some of our parliamentarians are up to, telling companies that they should be withdrawing the income from people that have been accused of wrongdoing. Do you agree with that? It makes me very uncomfortable, I can tell you. I want to look at that. I also want to talk to you about what Keir Starmer's been up to, saying that basically we shouldn't diverge much away from EU. Sounds a bit suspicious to me. A little bit like we might be edging our way closer to joining again the EU. Your thoughts? And also, liberal society. There's a big survey out today. Is it a good thing that society is way more liberal than it perhaps ever used to be? gbviews@gbnews.com is how you get a hold of me, or you can tweet me at gbnews. But top story, you'll be familiar with this from last night. Rishi Sunak, of course, he did what some were saying like a big shock announcement, basically U-turning on a lot of net zero stuff. He was pushed into that announcement, I would say, because of leaks, so he had to bring his thoughts forward. He's been in trouble for so many reasons today, but not least because there's the accusation that actually he's jeopardised that target of reaching net zero by 2050. While I'm talking, I will just remind you guys at home some of the things that he was suggesting in his announcement last night. I shall start with you, Alan Miller. Let's pick up the big criticism mainly about this net zero 2050 target. Is that in jeopardy because of these decisions yesterday?
Well, Rishi's tried to double down and say that he's still going to meet that criteria, but frankly, it should go. I mean, on the one hand, Britain's far further than anyone else down this road, but the net zero is a term. But when we look at what it actually means, it means an attack and assault on working people. It means that we're going to have further impositions and cuts. We've got all sorts of restrictions and nudges. There's surveillance associated with it. We've seen everything from roadblocks to the 15-minute cities without provision, public transport and services, but actually much more about a surveillance kind of state. I think the public now are seeing this. They're furious about it. He's recognising that the polls are going to be impacted by it, which is one of the reasons he's doing it. And frankly, we need a public discussion where everyone's engaged with a view for the next 100 years about energy independence and about growth and innovation, and not about limits and restrictions.
Well, we're having a public discussion and you're engaged, so let me know your thoughts on it. Do you agree with Alan?
I agree with very little of that.
Oh.
I think it shows what a weak and feeble Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is. When he became Prime Minister, I had high hopes of him. I thought he was going to be better than Truss and Johnson and May, and he's just as bad as them. A strong Prime Minister, a strong patriotic Prime Minister, doesn't kick the can down the road. He redoubles his efforts and says, look, we've got to reach this target. We've got to do it in such a way that reduces the cost to people, and we've got to maintain our role as leading the world in this matter. And we've also got to maintain our reputation for sticking to agreements when we make them. He's trashed all of that.
So what?
Sorry?
So what? What does it matter? Like you're saying...
Well, I'll tell you why, so what.
We've got to lead the world stage. Who cares about the world stage when people here literally can't afford it?
So you don't care about people who live in the Maldives or in islands in the Indian Ocean or in the Pacific where the tides are
about our reputation on the world stage.
Yes, our reputation on the world stage matters as well. If we don't stick to agreements, why would anybody make an agreement with us? It is quite interesting because outside you were saying, wouldn't it be good if people ever said they changed their mind? And maybe he might say that he's changed his mind on this. I don't actually think he's changed his mind. I think he's appealing to the electorate because he knows, not just like with Uxbridge, not just ULEZ and CAS and low emission zones, around the country people are furious that they're having these limits and restrictions imposed on them. Net zero is a blunt tool. The way we solve the problems in the world is to have dynamic wealth creation, to have investment in infrastructure, research and development, not having limits, ever increasing sort of sustainable targets that reduce our ability by people who fly around in jets and limousines and they say, do as I say and not as I do. It's unacceptable. It's pushing down the actual cost, the living standards of people, particularly in a cost of living crisis. And I think the British public are aware of it. That's why together we've got a campaign that's saying no to net zero, and we're going to push this for the whole year. I think you'll find that polls actually show that the British public support net zero and the target of net zero by 2050. But I agree with you on the economic front. And what's happened here is he's messing around people in the energy industry, people who are making electric cars, by delaying these targets. He's messing around industry, and it's another example of how the Conservative Party and the Conservative government have lost touch with British industry and British businessmen. And we have this extraordinary thing where the Labour Party is more in touch with British industry and so on. And I agree about people flying around all the time. Rishi Sunak is in and out of that helicopter, whizzing around the country all the time. Why can't he go by train?
Why can't he go by train? When was the last time you tried to do great distance travelling?
I go up by train I go on the train about twice a week. I mean, I was in Manchester. They frequently are delayed, but planes are frequently delayed as well. You try and get to the centre of... I'll do a little film, right? We'll leave here now. We'll leave... I'll tell you, we'll do it after the programme, 6 o'clock. We'll go to the centre of Manchester. I'll go by train and you go by plane. Let's see who gets there first.
Is it a private plane? a la Rishi Sunak?
Well, you'd have to order one. You'd have to order one now, wouldn't you?
You see, this is what I think is, like, ridiculous. Why is the Prime Minister of this country going to get on, I don't know, the Avanti West Coast, I don't know, 1007 to try and get a meeting? The Avanti
West Coast 1007, I travel on those trains a lot. I'm a United supporter. I go up for football games. I've got other commitments in Manchester. They may be slightly late these days, but actually the service is pretty good. On other lines, it's worse, I admit. But on the West Coast, if you travel by train, you'd know this.
But what you're pointing to is the fact that...
hang on. I am from Hull, and I travel from Hull to London often. It got to the
the Hull trains are a bit worse.
It got to the point, actually, where some of my travelling was so bad. No, I don't want to be on rail replacement buses with all my cases and my kid. No, I don't want to be stuck in Doncaster for God knows how long because I've missed the connection. So then I moved, heaven forbid, back to the car again. It would have drove you potty. Now, let me ask you this. Have you got rid of your car?
I'm not anti-car. I drive myself.
Have you got rid of your car since I last spoke to you?
No, I haven't done. No.
Right, OK. Well,
and
then
it's our car anyway, so it'll be a decision made by two people.
You were saying that you think it's a sign of weakness.
It is a sign of weakness.
Somebody has listened to the electorate, whatever they're driving for. Because let me just show you.
I don't think that's what the electorate are saying.
Well,
We're both saying this now. I don't think the electorate are saying that.
Let me show you what Zach Goldsmith, he's not happy, so I think I can bring his tweet up. He's basically saying this is cynical beyond belief, and he's referencing, you know, like when he was saying that he's scrapped meat taxes, scrapped compulsory car sharing and all the rest of it. He's basically saying that these policies that Rishi Sunak has basically U-turned on apparently didn't even exist in the first place. So he's saying that this is just basically out-and-out politicking, and that it's become a wedge issue to basically emulate some of the division, Alan, that's going on in the States and bringing that over here. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't agree with that. I mean, the thing about the culture wars and the division in the States, it's very problematic, but actually it takes much more the form of Republican, Democrat within that. Whereas in the UK, there are far more independent campaigning groups and others. We know there's over 30% of people that are saying they do not trust the mainstream political parties. There's an appetite for actual serious discussion. The problem is the technocrats of blue, red, yellow and green are contemptuous of the public. They think that they can just spin these platitudes, that we can have a bit of nudge. They're the smart ones, all the crass, silly public. They're consuming and they're a bit toxic. They need to have things done to them. And what really needs to happen, contrary to Mr Goldsmith's view, is that we need to put the public front and centre. If you imagine the kind of a Festival of Britain, the kind of great exhibition idea of the next 100 years, where we want to be, that means serious discussions about resources, innovation, technology, infrastructure, planes for everyone, right? Transformation, new types of energy, tidal wave, great nuclear opportunities, the ones we haven't created. You can't do that when we have a sustainable outlook, a limits to growth, a kind of we've gone too far, a net zero. It's unacceptable, it's punishing to working people, and we need to dispense with it and start afresh.
Planes for everyone?
Yes.
So everybody's going to have their own aeroplane?
Can have drones like the Jetsons, and actually Uber experimented with that in Melbourne.
And isn't the carbon consumption, the carbon emissions from that are going to be even greater?
Well, maybe
I mean, you probably, I suspect, don't think there's a problem at all about climate change, do you?
Well, what I think is that we've got a serious problem, which is that we've become completely panic-stricken. We've become risk-averse.
But on the climate change, do you think that climate change is...
I'll tell you what I think. I think the way to solve any problems that we have, which always come along in human society, is to innovate, invest and have technology, but not to have...
I agree with that. We all agree with that. But do you think that climate change is a problem?
We don't all agree with it because...
I've asked you 3 times now. I'll go up to 4. Is climate change a problem?
Are you concerned about climate change or not?
Well, that's a general question. I mean, I think there are issues that happen with climate, but not to the extent where we're fear-induced and we're told it's global boiling and we're all about to die with Armageddon. Absolutely not.
Well, there are parts of the world where it is pretty hot these days, and you know it. Not least this country.
He said last week on my programme that we're going to be potentially frying about a decade if we don't change our ways.
I didn't mean literally frying, but I did mean that the areas around the equator are going to be, it's going to be unbearable to live there.
Well, guess what?
And that people who do live there will want to go north. And that the problem of mass migration will be greater.
Well,
but I notice, Alan, that you still haven't answered the question.
Well,
I mean, it's almost getting to Paxman.
Excuse me, it's my programme, not yours.
Right, well, you ask him the questions then.
I will. Excuse me, I'll ask him whatever questions I want. Listen, I've come up with a solution. I've come up with a solution for everything. Everyone out there, when it comes to climate change, if you're concerned, like what Michael is, give up your cars, don't fly anywhere, eat less meat, right, and then let's see what that does to the climate emissions. And then maybe we can reassess some of the targets, and everyone else that's not on board, they can perhaps come afterwards if indeed there is still the need. Give me your thoughts on all of it. Look, I've got a lot to come. Right, I want to talk to you about Parliament, I want to talk to you about Brexit, and I want to talk to you about how liberal we are and whether or not it's a good thing. I'll see you in 2.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
With you till 7 o'clock. Alistair says, can you ask your panel, please, have they got electric cars or a heat pump?
No.
Have you got an electric car or a heat pump?
Heat pump.
Have you?
Not an electric car.
You've got a heat pump?
Yeah.
Was that by choice, or was it like inspired by environment, or was it because you felt that legislation was about to come in? What made you get a heat pump?
All of those things, yeah. Just that it was the economic thing to do and concern for the environment. And eventually we'll get an electric car, but at the moment we can't afford one. But,
well,
you know, if you keep having me on the show,
I was
then
just
maybe...
about to say,
yeah.
play your cards right. Pay attention when I tell you to wind your thinking up, and you could be booked again. John says, Michelle, global warming is real. We'll get you a battery at least. Global warming is real, but our actions are just to make ourselves feel good, says John. Dean says, I'm not falling for all this net zero farce. There's a few people making an absolute fortune out of all of this, and we are the mugs that are paying it. It's all falling heaviest on the shoulders that can least afford it. I absolutely hear you on that. Now, listen, this, I think, is a very important topic because a parliamentary select committee has been busy sending letters to a variety of companies, basically. One in particular has really caught people's eye. It's the DCMS, basically, the select committee there, and they have written to a platform called Rumble. If you don't know what that is, worry not. It's basically, to simplify it, it's just like a website, basically, which will host your video content and allow you to make money from it. And it all centres around Russell Brand. Now, if I can, I shall bring this letter up for you, but I'll not pick on you, but I'll start with you, Alan. The nuts and bolts of this, right, and it's been sent by the chair of the Culture, Media and Sport Committee. And what they're asking, they reckon that they're asking questions, which I'm a bit suspicious of. There's not a single question mark on here, but there is a few statements that concern me. And the essence of it is about, and I quote, "We are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform." So what they're trying to do, if you ask me, is trying to... and let me just make a point. This is not about the allegations at Russell Brand. I don't want to get into those because, to me, it's not about that. This could be anybody and these could be any allegations. This is about the principle of should parliamentarians be trying to put pressure onto private organisations to get people to lose their income at the point of allegation.
When I saw this letter, I made I got all the people in our organisation to go and check it because I thought it was fake.
Yeah.
I could not believe that we've got politicians, this shows how naive I can be sometimes as well, that are actually trying to instruct private entities, big tech, to take down and demonetise people around allegations. So if I now say something about Michael or he says something about me, are we not going to be able to go and do things anymore? This is something from the world of Stalinism. This is something from the world of tyranny. We've just had the online safety bill passed the day before yesterday, where big tech are going to make decisions about what can be said and what can't be, what can be expressed, no more encryption. This... And we should remind ourselves that the Culture, Media and Sport Department is also the unit that has the Counter-Disinformation Unit, the CDU, another Eastern European in the time of the Cold War sounding organisation that's been spying on journalists, public health people, doctors and citizens. This is absolutely outrageous. And
they would probably deny that if they were here to deny.
This is absolutely outrageous. And what should happen is everyone, your viewers who believe strongly about this, everyone should let the DCMS know, should let this particular Baroness know, and should write to the government. We should make sure that we have the ability to have free expression. If someone's guilty of something, let them be tried in the courts. We are innocent until proven guilty in this country, and people should not get taken down, because this even reinforces much more, in my mind, this is a whole strategy to cancel someone and shut them down. It's absolutely unbelievable.
I want to make something absolutely clear as well, because I too was I couldn't believe my eyes when I read this letter. So I tried very hard to get somebody, ideally Caroline actually, who wrote the letter, who's the chair of that committee. I tried to get her on to stand by this. It wasn't possible. I tried also to get anyone, quite frankly, from that committee to join the conversation to defend this. I mean, what are you thinking? I'd love to ask that question. I wasn't able to get anybody on. Michael, your thoughts?
Well, Alan's got it all wrong, and your headlines have got it all wrong, because this letter does not tell these companies to stop Mr. Brand monetising his content, nor, as Alan used the word, does it instruct them. It's investigating whether he's still able to monetise them, and expressing some disapproval that he might be able to do so. But it's not instructing, it's not telling. You've gone way over the top, both of you. I think the Culture, Media, Sport Committee might have something to say about that in terms of GB News's output. But what I'm saying here, but I think it is a legitimate. These are legitimate questions, legitimate areas to explore.
And
you're talking about the public.
Question mark on that letter?
No, but questions don't always have a question mark on.
Do you think
and you know that well?
Do you think they should be? Do you think you should ask a question from a genuine, curious place to ascertain an answer? Do you think you should? Is that what a question is?
I think.
Do you think a question should be posed?
Yes, I do. But I think both of you have gone on about respecting the views of the British public here. I think these are exactly the points that the British public, Alan and Michelle, would want to know. Is Russell Brand still able to make money out of these sites? Now, I would make another point. If they're going to say you can't have any more income from your output, then they should take the output down. They shouldn't carry on making money out of it themselves.
Well, do you know what? Let me say this to you, Michael Crick. Let me just say this to you.
Yes, Michelle Dewberry.
really hope that somebody doesn't make horrendous allegations about you.
Right.
Because
so do I.
In this society, we have a principle that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. Now, you can tell me, as I'm sure this Select Committee will say to defend themselves that they are posing questions. If you want to pose a question, then you come at that from an impartial, interested point of view. You do not preempt those questions, because the questions they're asking about stuff like, can you confirm whether or not he's able to monetize his content? So that is a question. You've preempted that question with the previous statement, which says we are concerned that he may be able to profit from his content on the platform. What business of a parliamentary select committee is it whether or not currently an innocent man is earning a living?
Well, you say he's an innocent man. We don't know that yet. And also, remember, the Channel 4 programme had many cases of Russell Brand making jokes about sex and women, which frankly would never get on television these days, and they certainly wouldn't get on even on your channel. Treating, talking, for instance, for instance, he talked about an obstacle course about how to get a woman to have sex with you. I
don't need any.
Well, the very fact you're saying that makes the point that I think that even if you take away the specific allegations of sexual assault and rape and so on, there is enough that appeared on that programme of behaviour that I think most of the British public, Alan, would find unacceptable.
Well, do you know what? Here's the thing, because I need to go to the weather in a minute. It is heating up in here, but I will say this, right? You need everyone out there that agrees with this kind of notion that if you are alleged to have had, to have done something, then you know what, you are fair game to get your entire income and all the rest of it cancelled at the state of allegation. I think that is a very slippery slope. And all of these broadcasters, by the way, that are now conducting all of these investigations and all the rest of it, to Michael's point, this guy, he did not make any kind of hidden kind of discreet things. He was quite out there with some of his language and his suggestions. People knew that. People were comfortable with that. So all of this, oh yeah, guess what? We've looked inward now. We're investigating ourselves. Really? Anyway, look, I shall leave you guys to be the final say on that. Maybe bring some sense to this conversation. What do you make to it all? It's heating up in here, as I said. Let's see if it is outside too.
That warm feeling inside. From
Box
Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. Thursday's blustery showers will ease overnight. Some drier and clearer spells, but also a cool night to come with temperatures widely in the single figures before further showers on Friday. Now, we've lost the persistent spells of rain that we saw earlier in the week, especially across western parts of the UK. But we've still got quite a number of showers circulating around an old area of low pressure that's sitting to the north of Scotland. And that means there will be further showers overnight, especially for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales. And there'll be some showers or even some thunderstorms just running through the channel close to Kent at times overnight. But inland, actually plenty of clear spells, and under those clear spells with light winds, temperatures falling into the mid to high single figures or even the low single figures for northern parts of the UK. So a fresh start on Friday, but a bright start for many. Decent spells of sunshine across the Midlands into eastern England for a time. The bulk of the showers during the morning will be in the west. They'll move east. The odd rumble of thunder in eastern England by the afternoon. And it's a cool day compared with what we've experienced so far in September. That leads us on to a frosty start in places on Saturday. Touch of frost mid-Wales northwards in sheltered spots, but actually plenty of sunshine. And it's looking like a fair day for the vast majority. The cloud will build into the afternoon, but decent dry and bright weather lingers on. That is until Sunday, when persistent rain returns to the west, a bit warmer in the south and east.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. Well, we're just talking about Rumble just before that weather forecast. Their response, by the way, they were having absolutely none of it when it came to the letter from UK Parliament. They called it an extremely disturbing letter. They obviously said that they deplore all of this kind of serious allegations and all the rest of it. They pointed out that they feel that both alleged victims and accused people are entitled to a full and serious investigation. They said that they are devoted to the vital cause of defending a free internet, and they think it is deeply inappropriate and dangerous that the UK Parliament would attempt to control who is allowed to speak on their platform. And they finished by saying, although it may be politically and socially easier for Rumble to join a cancel culture mob, Doing so would be a violation of the company's values and mission, and we empathetically reject the UK Parliament's demands. Good. Alan Miller, very quick final word to you.
Final word. Well, Michael said just before the break that we don't know if he's innocent or not. Under English law, you are innocent until proven guilty. And the final point on this is that they are saying this is targeting them. It's an instruction because they're saying the platform to undermine the welfare of victims. We don't know if there are victims yet or not till it's proven of inappropriate, potentially illegal behaviour.
Well,
so
all of this depends on it going to court, doesn't it? I suspect it won't, because I suspect the evidence won't be enough for a criminal trial, but it won't be enough for Russell Brand to take a libel action.
Well,
but he's admitted he's a sex addict.
I'm not going to sit here and speculate on the outcomes. I maintain my position. Allegations. Really? Do you deserve to lose everything because people have made allegations that may or may not be true? I don't know. Luckily, I'm not the one that has to be the judge of it either. Chris says, I cannot stand Russell Brand. I don't like his comedy and I think he's an awful person. However, innocent until proven guilty is absolutely always the way. I'm going to take a quick break now. When I come back, don't go anywhere. Brexit, Keir Starmer, there's a new video about him saying basically he doesn't want us to diverge too far from their rules. And I also want to ask you, we're a very liberal society these days, but is it been for the better or not? See you in 2.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Whoa, Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, Alan Miller and Michael Crick alongside me. They don't have a moment's rest, these two. I don't think there's much that they agree on at all. I lost the track of it all, but there was even on about weapons of mass destruction and Blair and all the rest of it in the break. Anyway, from one Prime Minister to potentially one in waiting, Keir Starmer. He's apparently put his foot in it. He's been caught saying, well, I'll let you listen to what he's been caught saying, shall I?
Most of the conflict with the UK being outside of the UK arises insofar as the UK wants to diverge and do different things to the rest of our EU partners. Obviously, the more we share values, the more we share a future together, the less the conflict. And actually, different ways of solving problems become available, you know.
Well, I'm sure he said when the UK is outside the UK, obviously he meant the EU, if I did hear that correctly. Anyway, this is all about how closely aligned to the EU should we be. I do feel like when you listen to a bit more of that speech, there's this kind of notion that if we come out of the UK and we... Oh, are you ready? Ready? Toxic, sensitive warning, trigger warning. If we dare to actually stand on our own 2 feet, that somehow everything is going to collapse, that somehow Britain cannot be trusted to forge our way in the world, and whatever legislation we create, there's somehow this given that it's going to be much worse than the EU's legislation. And I reject that notion, actually. We should have the freedom to define our own way forward, shouldn't we?
Well, we should remember that Keir Starmer's the one who said that all that noisy squabbling in Parliament, that terrible, noisy stuff, is not particularly pleasant, and it's much nicer in the EU, the unaccountable EU that the majority of the people in this country voted to be out of, and it's the EU, not Europe. And it's also the case that this is all to do with squandering this sense of independence. For 30 years, we've had bureaucrats that have not had to be accountable to the public. Precisely at the point where they have to be, some of them are pushing more and more to go along the idea that we don't have to take responsibility and accountability. I think that the public are wise to this. I think they've also seen that it's been squandered, some of these opportunities. And this is the point, at the end of the day. We need elected representatives to be accountable. We need them to be responsible. And actually, we need to be able to chart our own decisions and not be re-entangled with a whole lot of bureaucracy where people say, oh, I can't do this now because this is what they're saying over there.
Much
The problem about our being outside the EU is that if we diverge from EU standards in much of the markets that British industry wants to sell to in the EU, then we're not going to be able to sell to them because they require us, if we're going to sell our goods in Europe, to meet their standards. So it makes sense for Britain to go along with EU standards. No, it's our choice. We can independently say, right, well, we'll scrap them all. Well, you won't actually make many sales in Europe. You'll end up having to do your sales elsewhere. It's purely a pragmatic thing. And I suspect now, I don't just suspect, polls now suggest that the British public, that Alan keeps going on about and keeps maintaining he's on the pulse of the British public, the British public are actually rather regretting leaving the EU. Starmer has caught the climate there, and we will see what happens.
Don't make that statement and start talking about Starmer. How do you know that the British public...
Well, you made a statement saying he'd put his foot in it.
How do you know that the British public...
And remember, Ofcom are on your case.
Answer my question. Good, you know what? Good for Ofcom. We are regulated in the same way, and there's a lot of people out there
if they had any backbone,
to do. I'm not letting you make... you might be able to make these snide comments in other places, but you don't make them on my watch, I'm afraid. We are regulated...
If they had any backbone.
We are regulated. If they had any backbone, what?
If they had any backbone to regulate you properly. And I see that Mrs. Dine... I've said that. I did finish the sentence.
Right.
It ended with the word properly.
Right. I will be absolutely clear, right? Because I'm not having this. I'm being told
I'm not having this.
No, I'm
not having this.
Don't be patronising to me, Michael. I'll kick you off from a show. I'll tell you that for free.
If you want, I'll go now.
No. If you want to go now, go now. I'll sit and talk to Alan Miller.
But, I mean, look at it. You two attack me non-stop. You're not an impartial presenter. You constantly...
Do you know what? You're behaving like an adolescent.
Right.
You two attack me.
I'm going.
You're going. Right, well, I'll take over then.
Well, no, excuse me. I know you think you're hilarious, but I'm going to the break for no reason other than we've wasted all of our time when we could have been having a constructive, productive conversation about Brexit, and I would have really liked to have been. Instead, we've been messing around talking about Ofcom. Let's go to a break, and I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, this is Dewbs & Co. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've not kicked him out, the co-founder... Well, no, I was just about to say I've not kicked him out, the co-founder of the Together campaign group. Alan Miller is alongside me, as is the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. We've just done a group 2-minute meditation and calmed ourselves down. Respectful debate will resume because the British Attitude Survey. This is all about basically a long-standing survey. It's about how attitudes have shifted and changed within our society. It looks at things like how liberal we are becoming. Now, there's some interesting things that jumped out to me. I'm just going to share with you some of the key points from this survey. Let me bring them up on the screen, if possible. So, Michael, I'll just share some of these. So we compare, for example, from the 80s to 2022, the people who want children. Do you think that they should be married? 70% in the 80s said, yeah, you should have kids within marriage. 24% in 2022. Should you be able to have an abortion, a woman? 37% said yes in 1980, 76% said yes in 2022. When it comes to women staying at home and guys being the one that go out and earn the money, less than 50% said yes to that in the 80s and now 9% in 2022. So we're definitely more liberal in lots of different ways. Is that always a good thing?
Well, it depends what you mean by liberality. I mean, if liberality means people are more selfish, less considerate of their neighbours, of the community, of the world, of the planet, it's not a good thing. If it means that gay people can live unpersecuted, unprosecuted, unbeaten up, live free and liberal lives like the rest of the community, that is to be welcomed. And most of all the things on the list that you read out there are to be welcomed. But there are aspects of a more liberal world which do worry me.
Like what?
Well, as I say, if it means that people are more selfish, they're less considerate, they feel they no longer have duties and responsibilities, that they can just do what they want, a form of extreme liberality, then I think that it would be a grossly retrograde step.
Alan Miller?
See, I think that there's an issue, which is I'm a big subscriber that in private sphere, people should be able to do exactly what they want, providing they're not harming other people. And it should really be of no interest to anyone else. However, we've got an issue that all of tradition and culture and the history is now under attack, and the sense of universal principles, what Michael might be talking about, virtues, civic engagement, the whole sense of purpose, where we're going as a society, a belief in ourselves, a sense of one another. Now, that's not... Still to say, my mum fell over recently, right? And about 8 people helped her. They were remarkable. So we hear all these terrible stories.
Is she all right? You've got to tell us the end of the story.
She's recovering, thank you. She's recovering. But it was really heartwarming to see that there were people locally who did really beautiful things, and they got in touch and they helped and they were there. So we still have... I'd still maintain that the public, and the majority of the public, are really decent and have good values. But we have an issue about who we are and a sense of purpose, a sense of virtues and values. They're often under attack. There's a sense that we are rubbish, that people are no good, that our whole society is based on a litany of terrible things historically. We're all these evil perpetrators of everything, rather than having a sense of who we are as a community. And I think that... So it's good that we have the ability to do what we want in the private sphere, but it's a real problem now that we've got this sense of decay in these ideas. And worse than that, we've also now got some people who've taken over and had a big influence without democratically discussing it with the public, institutions, education and elsewhere, that are saying this is now the new truth, and if you don't agree with it, then you're either this or that and you should be cancelled. And that's another big issue. So we can see that in the sex-based rights discussion and a range of others as well.
And do you... Because there'll be lots of conversation about religion, for example. So the amount of people that would identify themselves as religious, that is on decline. Some people will say about traditional family values. So the, the unit of families, that is the important family, that is the important entity. When it comes to children, the people that matter the most are the parents, the people that matter when it comes to things like the final say is the parents. Many people would worry that those kind of things seem to be eroded, whether it's the religious aspect, whether it's the family values aspect. Do you share that or not?
Well, I'm an atheist. I do think religion did a lot of harm, has done a lot of harm over the centuries. But on the other hand, I think religion was if it introduced the right values, and we're talking about all religions here, they do have the right values, and if that helps people operate ethical and moral lives, and responsible lives, and lives of courtesy and consideration, and the kind of world that Alan's talking about, great. But the religion did some terrible things as well. Now, what was the other aspect of your question? Because I wanted to answer that.
It was about the family, because you see, when I think...
Families, yes. Yeah. No, I think the families are an important part of society, and family life is to be welcomed. On the other hand, I don't think it should be used, as it has been in the past, as an attack on gay people.
Yeah, I'm not thinking necessarily about gay people. What I'm thinking about is when you've got a child, where is the authority for that child? Because for me, I think I get to determine what's right for my child, me, not a school teacher, not whoever it is, not any institution, not a medical professional who thinks that my child can somehow give this consent. I believe that as a parent, the buck stops with me for the responsibility of my child and the decisions surrounding my child.
But there are limits, surely. I mean, if you, for instance, said, right, well, my child, I don't think that my child should go to school and he should sit at home all day eating donuts, I think that the state, in those circumstances, would have a duty to step in and say, look, your child's got to go to school and you're mistreating them.
Well, actually, there was something in the news today that so many parents were saying actually that perhaps they didn't want the kids to go to school.
But it should also be noted that it was the King James Bible that got the majority of people in this country to start reading. It was also the Reformation that created the idea of conscience and political liberties and freedom, and the whole idea of justice and everything that underpins our sense of norms within that, in law and in our relationships, equality, freedom, and those things. But on top of that, when Nietzsche said God is dead, the whole idea of religion on the one hand and politics on the other, we've got this now cavern, we've got this gap where people don't feel part of ideas. There's like, my truth is your truth, and there isn't a sense of authority about any of these things, about the principles. And I think we do need to resuscitate a sense of what we and us, the idea of the Constitution, we the people, right? This, because often people mock it and they go, oh, and they sort of say, well, you know, the whole litany of the history, it's all terrible things that have happened. And actually, the majority of the thing, we have done a remarkable thing. This thing, civilization, people go, oh, civilization. The whole idea that we can have these political freedoms, these liberties, we've created this incredible world, and we've got problems. But the way we sort it out is, once again, to have the majority of people involved in it and not just have these, like, technocrats and all that telling us this is the way, and we've got to be able to do that together.
Well, there you go. Look, time flies when you're having fun, and goodness gracious me, as it got heated in here tonight. I need to go and have a lie down now under a bit of cooler. I just want to make a serious point. GB News, we stand for respectful debate. We believe that there are many different sides to a story, all of them valid. You are a very valued member of the conversation. We are, of course, governed by Ofcom in the same way that everybody else is. I'm very proud to work at this channel, and I hope that long may our debate continue. But for now, it will not, because time has flown and Nigel Farage is up next. Michael Crick, thank you for your company. Alan Miller, thank you for yours too. Crucially, thanks also for spending your last hour with me. Have a good night. Don't go anywhere. See you tomorrow night.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there. Thursday's blustery showers will ease overnight, some drier and clearer spells, but also a cool night to come with temperatures widely in the single figures before further showers on Friday. Now, we've lost the persistent spells of rain that we saw earlier in the week, especially across western parts of the UK, but we've still got quite a number of showers circulating around an old area of low pressure that's sitting to the north of Scotland, and that means there will be further showers overnight, especially for western Scotland, Northern Ireland, western parts of England and Wales, and there'll be some showers or even some thunderstorms just running through the channel close to Kent at times overnight. But inland, actually plenty of clear spells, and under those clear spells with light winds, temperatures falling into the mid to high single figures, or even the low single figures for northern parts of the UK. So a fresh start on Friday, but a bright start for many. Decent spells of sunshine across the Midlands into eastern England for a time. The bulk of the showers during the morning will be in the west. They'll move east. The odd rumble of thunder in eastern England by the afternoon. And it's a cool day compared with what we've experienced so far in September. That leads us on to a frosty start in places on Saturday. Touch of frost mid-Wales northwards in sheltered spots, but actually plenty of sunshine. And it's looking like a fair day for the vast majority. The cloud will build into the afternoon, but decent dry and bright weather lingers on. That is until Sunday, when persistent rain returns to the west, a bit warmer in the south and east.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.